Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick, and the Dukes are 3-0.
The Dukes are 3-0. It may have not been the prettiest game. The offense may have sputtered at times, but regardless, James Madison is 3-0. They are undefeated. I believe they are now 9-3 against FBS teams in this transition, quote unquote, period. Transition period, my butt. This team looks like it is ready to dominate some FBS action.
I was impressed. I'm impressed with the last two games, just finding ways to win. I don't think they've actually played a complete game yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm impressed.
Okay.
They won. Like that is all that matters. Like, at the end of, but I didn't walk away from either of those games going like, that was a good football game. I'm impressed with that 60 minutes of football. Maybe I'm being too harsh.
I will say college football, I've watched a decent amount the last weekend. There's a lot of bad football or like inconsistent football. So getting the wins with the inconsistency is good, but also agreed, like they played a lot better during the Signetti era, like cleaner games.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm impressed they're 2-0. I'm not impressed with the games they play, or I guess 3-0. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave out Bucknell, but I'm just not impressed with how they did it. We'll get into it. I'll be optimistic throughout this podcast. I'll probably finish out a little pessimistic. We've got a lot of advanced stats. We have EPA, expected points added, net yards, yards per drive, net average yards gained, points per. We're going to dive into it and trying to figure out what exactly the issue is for this JMU offense, what the issue is for the JMU defense. But first, we want to let you guys know that football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all of your sports wagering info with all of the up-to-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest games, odds. Get the latest odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL to college football, all at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates, statistics, news, and odds. From week one all the way to the college football postseason and the NFL postseason, BetOnline gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. So head to betonline.ag or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's promo code BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. If you're using that 50% welcome bonus, I highly urge you to use it on James Madison University football this weekend against Utah State.
I'm kind of surprised. We'll talk about that spread at some point, I'm sure, but kind of like the Dukes this weekend. But we've also got to give 3-0 a shout out. Very important. The Valley Collab House in Harrisonburg. We're recording on a Monday today. We do not always record on Mondays, but it is Minuteman Monday. $3 Minuteman pours. You've got one on the screen. $3 for that bad boy is a pretty good deal. Tuesdays, you're getting half off cases at the Valley Collab House. And I'm still impressed every Friday, First Tap Friday, a new brew is released weekly in the Harrisonburg tap room, which is pretty darn cool. So some great stuff there. Very excited to be working with them another year and to be on their Instagram today.
And to be on their Instagram. And if I'm not mistaken, I think their Instagram posted this Hop Slide, which is they've been doing cool beers. It's a 10-year anniversary of 3-0 this year. So to celebrate, they've been doing a lot of these cool beers. One of them they did in collaboration with New Belgium Brewing. And it's a cool IPA. Highly recommend it. But currently, I believe they're 4-packs. So it's 4 16-ounce cans are only $5 at their tap rooms. So
it's a great deal.
An amazing deal. And it's one of my favorite beers that they have out right now. So I highly, highly recommend it. And if you happen to be getting engaged anytime soon,
There's a reason Christopher William Jewelers has been voted Best of Virginia year after year. It's not just one thing that sets us apart. It's everything. It's the selection, extensive and unmatched, with every engagement ring, loose diamond, and fashion jewelry chosen for quality and brilliance. It's the service. From our diamond experts to our master goldsmith, our team shares a passion for what they do, and it shows. It's the atmosphere, both glamorous and laid back. See for yourself why people can't stop talking about Christopher William Jewelers in Harrisonburg and Weir's Cave.
Yeah, that's where Virginia goes to get engaged, folks.
Shout out to all our partners and Three Notched. I didn't mention this on the first time through, but we have the live podcast that is what I think maybe more than tentatively set for November 17th at 5 p.m. in Harrisonburg.
Yeah, we have a poster being made, so I would hope that November 17th at 5 p.m. is all but locked in. But there's a men's basketball game that night at 7 p.m., so come on over pregame, talk with us. I think we're going to do a little bit of a different setup for that podcast, probably more audience-based, talking more just general musings about JMU athletics, JMU sports department, JMU football, men's basketball, women's basketball, all that great stuff. So come hang out with us for a few hours before the game. Head on over for tip-off post-game. And then JMU football is the next day.
Yeah, it should be a really fun weekend.
It's going to be an electric weekend. I can't wait. Either wherever we end up getting our Airbnb or hotel or whatever, we'll be drinking a good amount of Three Notch beer, hanging out, having a good time. And hopefully we'll be having as good of a time as we did during that Troy game. Actually, would you say you had a good time during that game?
Maybe a better time.
Yeah,
better time would be good. They the last 5 offensive possessions ended in punts, other than the victory formation. But anytime you can punt 5 consecutive times in the second half and then end with a victory formation against the reigning conference champion, you've got to be somewhat pleased.
Yeah, I guess. No, you do have to be pleased. 100% you have to be pleased with the win. And I mean, at the end of the day, they are undefeated. The defensive line held Troy to negative 12 rushing yards on the entire game. They are one of, if not the best run stopping unit in the entire nation. The defense probably played its best game from start to finish so far this season. Granted, that's a small sample size, but still was an electric performance by that defense. The special teams sneakily may be one of the best units in the entire nation. And I'm fully bought in on Ryan Hansen, the Arkansas State transfer punter. He's awesome. The offense left me with some kind of hesitancies, but look, they put up 36 against UVA to beat the Cavaliers in Scott Stadium. They back that up in a classic letdown spot with maybe a little bit of a clunker offensively, but the defense does exactly what it needs to do to pick up the slack, which is what the offense did the week before and pulled through with the win. I mean, that's my optimistic take from this game.
I think that's fair. Yeah, it was frustrating to see some of the offensive drives. I'm sure we'll get into some play calling gripes. But they did win against a good Troy team, as you mentioned, in a letdown spot. I mean, like Troy won the league last year with that very similar blueprint of like just ugly, low scoring games. And they went 12-2 doing it. So it's one where, I mean, their winning streak, whatever it was, they got it to 12 before Kansas State beat them or whatever. So like they have a good program. I think their coaches are good. It's on the road. Wouldn't say it was a hostile environment because they probably inflated their attendance number by like 20,000.
I don't know how do you get away with that?
I guess it's like tickets sold and like season tickets. And maybe I think you probably count everybody in the thing, but it's certainly wasn't people in the stands. I know it rained a little before, but like, come on, it was pretty bad turnout, I thought. So not necessarily a hostile environment, but still a tough opponent with good coaches. And they ground out an ugly one.
For sure. I mean, Jordan McLeod went 18 of 26 through the air for only 200 yards. He was sacked 3 times. Kalon Black led all rushers with 78 yards. His long on the night was 28 yards. He did average 6 yards per carry, which is really promising. But as a team, this is inflated a little bit because of Jordan McLeod's sacks, but they averaged only 2.3 yards per carry. Not the best number. And Elijah Surratt He's really good, man. He led the team with 6 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown. The St. Francis transfer is balling. I think he might be the best wide receiver on this team. Is that too crazy to say at this early in the season?
He's got really good size. He's got good hands. He's pretty good after the catch. I think it's him and Reggie Brown look like your two best. Although I kind of want to see Tajee Hudson and Phoenix Sproles get the ball more. Like they're both good players. I thought they were really impactful against Virginia. Pretty surprised to see them combine for 1 catch for 5 yards.
Yeah, that was a Tajee Hudson catch. Maxwell Moss, nothing. Zach Horton, nothing. Kai Wright had his first catch as a JMU Duke, 1 catch for 8 yards. Defensively, it was led the way by Jamry Croma, who had 2.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks. He also led the team with 6 tackles. Jalen Green also 6 tackles and 1.5 sacks as well. And Mikel Kamara, 2 sacks. James Carpenter also a sack.
Yeah, Kamara was really good. Croma was really good. I mean, we've kind of said it a lot, right? The defensive line, the starting defensive line is very good. And they were good because Troy tried to throw on most plays. Ended up taking 6 sacks. They got theirs a little bit through the air, but I think you're pretty pleased holding any offense to 14 points.
Yeah. Kamani Vidal, the leading rusher for Troy, only had 11 attempts. He only gained 27 yards. A big reason why JMU held Troy to negative 12 rush yards was the fact that Gunnar Watson had negative 44 yards, because in college football, when you get sacked, that goes as a negative rush attempt, even though it was a sack. So that kind of is how that number got kind of a little bit out of whack. But Watson dropped back 46 times, threw the ball for 333 yards, 2 tutties, 1 interception. He was sacked 6 times. Does the secondary bother you at all that they left up 333 yards through the air to Gunnar Watson, or does it not matter since at the end of the day they only put up 14 points?
I'm okay with it because they threw 46 times and because they got some sacks. It's different, right, than the whatever it was, 578 against Georgia Southern last year.
Yes.
I thought they did a decent job. They obviously gave up some plays. Devin Coles had an interception. Deep end, D'Angelo Pons is no longer as much of a bit, where I was expecting him to maybe play more his second year or beyond that. Recovered a block punt for a touchdown last week against UVA. Came in and played meaningful snaps this week. Would not be surprised if he had sort of that Chauncey Logan rise where he is cornerback 2 pretty soon.
Well, the Signetti comments in the Zoom call today with the Sunbelt Media, it sounded like there may be a change at boundary corner here coming up soon, or potentially seeing Pons in there more. Signetti said he needs more out of the boundary corner. That's currently Devin Coles. Chauncey Logan plays the field corner. But, I mean, we could realistically see D'Angelo Pons listed first in the 2 deep at cornerback opposite Chauncey Logan.
That's awesome, man. Don't throw it into the deep end.
Don't throw it into the deep end, baby.
But I was excited about that. I think they're still kind of figuring some stuff out. The safeties probably haven't played as well as they would hoped. And I don't know that there's drastic room for improvement given a lot of their age, to be honest with you. I think the pass defense will probably be a weakness all year. But if you get 6 sacks and don't give up any rushing yards, you can kind of work with that.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've been talking about for all offseason and in the beginning of the season. It's just, it's not the fact that you need a fantastic secondary, because your defensive line should get home in 3 seconds, maybe a little bit more at times, maybe a little bit less at times, but you just can't have a secondary that against UVA allows a completion in a second. And that happened at Georgia Southern too. So Troy had a lot of longer developing pass plays, but if a team is apt to maybe hit more quick slants, more bubble screens, more, quick hitter out routes, that's where I think JMU's secondary can really, really start hemorrhaging yards.
I think so too. I think that's what's still a little bit scary, especially when you look at South Alabama has a more competent offense than Troy. Georgia Southern, despite the many, many turnovers against Wisconsin, can still move the ball.
I will say this. That does bode well, I think, for JMU, because I think they're going to try and get those turnovers. So if there's turnover worthy plays, they're going to go for it. The issue is when a quarterback is smart with the ball. I'm very worried that South Alabama is just going to torch the secondary.
That'll be an interesting one. And then Coastal late, obviously McCall's been doing some nice things. So a lot of talented quarterbacks on the horizon. But hey, they found a way to get it done against Troy. We'll see how they can adjust moving forward. The thing that worries me too is like when you have those quick passes, it kind of takes like the pass rush out of it. And right now I feel like the pass defense is best when like it takes a little bit because the pass rush can get home and bail out the secondary. If you come to a point where they're not bailed out, I'm concerned.
Well, so JMU secondary, and I'm going to lean on EPA here, expected points added. So on a per play basis, you can break it down in a per game basis. So against the pass this season, JMU secondary has allowed 1.21 expected points added per game. So essentially what that means is with all the pass plays put together, you put them kind of into a bucket, and on an average basis, you could expect those pass plays to account for 1.21 points that they'll add to the scoreboard at the end of the game. It's just a way to kind of see how good a specific part of a team is playing, how good a unit is playing. And it's just a good way to contextualize how good or how bad a team is. And so for the secondary, allowing 1.21 EPA per game isn't necessarily the best. That's 86th in the nation. For comparison's sake, JMU's rush defense on a per game basis has a negative 7.93 EPA per game. So on average, JMU's rush defense is taking more than a touchdown off of the board. So at the end of the day, the EPA per game is looking really good at negative 6.72, which is 45th best in the country. But the issue you can circle, and it pops right off the page, is the fact that the secondary can get got, and kind of with what you were saying, if a team can exploit that, it won't matter that you can't rush on them. We saw what Georgia Southern did last year. We even saw what Troy did in this game. They were just content with throwing it 46 times with Gunnar Watson. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that may be near his career high in pass attempts in a game. And they just couldn't necessarily convert. Watson threw an interception, which was a drive killer. If you get if a team has the opportunity, JMU's secondary, JMU's defense against the pass won't hold up for a full 4 quarters. And I very much worry about that.
Yeah, I think that that at least gets us into one. And I don't know if we have a listener question section or if you want me to start throwing them out as they come in.
Throw them out as they come in.
Okay. Daniel Merriman, our close friend, our close confidant.
My man.
He asked, if teams decide to only throw against us, can the secondary, specifically the safeties, hold up against the gauntlet of the Sun Belt East? Good question.
I think they would win more times than not, but I think in the games you want to win, South Alabama, Marshall, potentially even App or Coastal, which is essentially all of the Sun Belt East, now that I've said it out loud, you can get into some very thin ice. You can get into some rough water real quick. Do I think they can hold up? Yes, because I don't think a quarterback will necessarily be hitting on every single one of their throws. I think the pass rush will get there at times, on longer developing plays. All JMU's defense has to do, and they talked about it on the broadcast on NFL Network this weekend, all JMU's defense has to do on first or second down is get you off schedule, and then they have you right where they want you. The issue with the secondary is at times you can just dink and dunk and stay on schedule extremely easily, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I think the part that it gives me a lot of hope is that Cignetti's pretty willing to mess with stuff. Like as much as we're like, oh, he's stuck in his ways. It would be pretty easy to not go to D'Angelo Pons, but he did. Like that to me is like, oh yeah, you're a true freshman. I think you can play in practice. We're playing the reigning conference champion. Sure. Let's see what you got on that stage. So I think that's encouraging. Is that and Jacob Thomas mixing in as a sophomore, where I think he is willing to be all right, I don't really care if you played 6 years of college football. This,
you're not playing right now.
18 or 19-year-olds outplaying you. So I'm going to put him in. So from that perspective, I'm excited, but a little concerned. And to have kind of a cop-out answer, I think some of this is going to depend on the offense. The offense has to play better. We have a kind of an idea of what the defense will be, which is elite against the run, really good in the front seven, and probably concerning in the back end. The offense, I feel isn't even close to reaching its potential. So if the offense fails to do that, then I don't know how much the defense can hold up. But if they're getting 35 points a game or whatever they got last year, then yeah, I think the defense can hold teams to like 28 in a key game against like Coastal or something and find a way to win.
Yeah, I agree. How good do you think JMU football can be this season after watching these first 3 games? Where do you think their ceiling is, and what do you set as a realistic expectation?
I'm not changing my expectations much from the beginning of the season, which maybe sounds dumb after the UVA and Troy wins, where we had them like 8-4, 9-3. That's still kind of what I have, which would be like 5-4 down the stretch, which sounds really lame. But the Sun Belt East is really good, and they haven't played a complete game, which on one hand is like, wow, if they do, look out. And on the other hand, like they're a quarter of the way through the season, and they haven't really looked good yet. Like at a certain point, right, when you get to like week 6 or something and they haven't shown a complete game, maybe that's just who they are. So I'm still a little bit concerned. I'm cautiously optimistic. Like double-digit wins is absolutely in play.
Yes.
But I'm still sort of expecting like 8-4.
I'm kind of expecting a stretch like last year where Centeio goes down, they lose to Marshall in an ugly game, they lose to Louisville, and then they put together a good finish to the season. But I'm expecting maybe even a longer kind of drought. I expect a win this week at Utah State. We'll get into Utah State in a little bit, but then I expect a loss to South Alabama at home. I expect maybe a loss to Marshall. I maybe expect a loss against App State. And I know these are all home games at Bridgeforth, but I mean, these are teams that, well, Marshall's away in Huntington, but like JMU could in their next few home games pick up a couple L's.
Well, it's like JMU beat UVA by a point. Like it was not a great showing against a UVA team that I still think is maybe not as bad as people expect, but there's only so many weeks left before that take of mine becomes very wrong. Like UVA has shown some alarming signs defensively in some other areas, but like Marshall's a touchdown favorite, or they were. I think it's a little lower now, but they're favored against Virginia Tech this weekend at home. South Alabama just beat Oklahoma State, which isn't great, but they beat them by 26 on the road. Like it's a good division.
That tells me if South Alabama played UVA, they would have crushed them.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's just a little bit terrifying, some of the talent that they're going to face, where it's like if you're not playing a complete game, I don't think you can have 5 consecutive second half punting drives and expect to like take a knee at the end with a nice win.
And we also talked about this a little bit last week. This team goes through really long offensive lulls. Against UVA, they didn't score between the second and third quarter, and then they didn't score again until like 9 minutes left in the fourth. And then in this game, in the second half, when you kind of needed a touchdown drive with any of those 5 punts, a touchdown drive all but wins it for you. You get a field goal in the second half, and that's it. And you still win, which is really, really good. Like, can't take that. A win is a win is a win. The defense stepped up big time every time they were called upon. The offense stepped up big time in the UVA game when they were expected to step up. A couple third down conversions. There was a couple long third down conversions in that Troy game that helped set up the field goal. But like at the end of the day, you have to just drive down and score. You have to just flex your muscle on these teams. And it feels like JMU hasn't done that. And I think I'm in the camp of, I don't know if this team can do that because like you said, we're a quarter of a way through the year. They played an FCS school. They didn't look sharp in that game. And that's the one game you need to be looking sharp in if you want to be a contender in the Sun Belt East. And then if you didn't get a fluke punt block, and I hate playing the what if game in sports, but like, what if they didn't get that? They lose that game. And then I
could do a lot the other way too with some, like if you make one tackle against UVA, you stall a drive or something like that.
You're right. You're right.
I get that. But I hear what you're saying. I think the other point that's probably worth noting, and I think most people probably have picked up on, we're picking nits. Like we think
yes, very much. They are 3-0 at the end of the day. Like they are 3-0. They won with an offensive display, putting up 36 points against an ACC school who has one of the best defensive lines in the ACC. If you put that defensive line, allegedly, if you put that defensive line on paper, quote unquote, with their 15, 28-year-olds into the Sun Belt, they're probably one of the better defensive lines in the Sun Belt. And Jamie put 36 points up on them. That's fantastic. Then they go on the road in Troy in a classic letdown spot, and they just boa constrict the heck out of the Troy Trojans. awesome win. But there
That was
are some real concerns.
some real concerns, but again, right, transition year, second year, they're doing some great stuff. Like
Yes, if you had told me they were 9-3 with one of those losses being against Marshall when their starting quarterback was ruled out 5 minutes before the game,
right.
and they were still in a position to win it in the fourth quarter, and another one of those losses was to Louisville, an ACC school. I'm trying to think of, and then another loss, they allowed
They were
600
Southern.
passing yards, and they never did it again the rest of the season. I'd be like, okay, that sounds like a pretty good transition time.
They've been doing a great job. So yeah, just to point out, because I know there might be a few people who are listening, is like these guys are lunatics. It's just I think we're debating whether they're going to go 8-4 or 11-1, basically, right? Is like what they need to do to get to that. But the Troy win was a heavyweight win. Like you win that one, you just want to do like the heavyweight belt kind of thing. The way they played defensively in the
great call out.
they
Great
showed
call out.
there, I thought was really impressive.
And you got to put them to sleep. You just got to go to sleep. You got to go to sleep.
And I don't know how many times I would do the belt, but probably like a dozen at least.
And then I mean, okay, can we talk about that video real quick? Was Chroma trying to stop him from doing it, or was he egging him on to do it?
Based on what Signetti said, it kind of sounds like he was corralling him to be like, it's okay. Like we don't, but I don't know. I don't know either way.
Shout out Daniel.
It really was. Defensive line coach. If you haven't seen the video, I guess the Troy students.
Should I pull it up? Should I try and pull it up?
Yeah, see if it's to come up. But then the tweet was also funny in its own right, with the Troy fan being like, "Stay classy." It's like it's not like he was giving him the bird.
That's the best. Like, and he goes, if you can't handle being pestered by a student section all game, don't coach. Don't fan if you can't handle getting like your shit rocked when you lose.
One of my favorite memories from the Richmond JMU college game day game, whoever that running back was who torched JMU's defense would go to the exercise bike right near the student section, like between every like Richmond score when the defense would go back out and like taunt the fans. And it was awesome because like he was cooking the Dukes. It's like, yeah, you got to be able to take that.
If you win a game, you're allowed to do what you want.
Was a little
okay.
Up, by the way.
This is the video. Absolutely epic. Go to sleep. Go to sleep.
Continues doing the heavyweight belt. Soon what does he walk away and then he
walked away and did it as he was going to the 50-yard line. This is great podcasting. For those who don't tune into the live stream, be sure to tune in the live stream every Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's Monday this week, but every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. But there's one more coming. Yes!
Boom.
Right there.
Boom.
And then the kisses to the fan. He comes back. More.
I did see a couple people out there, unbiased observers, that said it would have been nice to see a little change from just the heavyweight belt. I think that's where the sleep came in. But if maybe there was a third move, and I know Signetti said he talked to
maybe a peace sign
about it, but he said that wasn't what they want the program to do and things like that. I think there's probably a possibility Signetti also got to him and was like, hey, like, let's get a third move in there, right? Let's try to work some things in, just make sure that we're really representing the brand correctly.
Yeah, and another way they can represent the brand correctly is changing up how they're calling these first downs, because, man, is it bad. Do you want to share what you have found about this JMU offense through 2 FBS games?
Yeah, so I kind of threw out the Bucknell stuff just because I think they were trying some things and kind of a scrimmage more than a game. But against UVA and Troy, 65% of JMU's first down plays have been runs. They've averaged 4.1 yards per run on those first down runs, which is not bad. But they've had
staying ahead of the schedule.
They had a lot in there though that were like 1, -1, -2, 1 that are kind of tough. Passing plays, they averaged 10.1 yards per pass on the 35% of those, with 4 of the 18 plays going for at least 30 yards. So obviously it skews the average a little, but at the same time, like if you're getting 20-some% of your like first down passes as explosive plays, maybe something to consider.
Especially when you're at like even explosive plays aside, you're averaging a first down on first down.
Right. And my big concern.
I know that's so just like cut and dry, but like 10 yards on first down is amazing.
The big concern was kind of some of the passing against Troy, where it was they were really heavy on the early down. So first and second down is considered an early down. They ran it on 60% of those against Troy, pass on 40%. On those early downs, they had a 53% success rate on the passes, which were only 40% of those plays, right? And the rushes had a 25% success rate. It just felt like a spot where like Troy thinks you're going to run the ball on first down. I don't think they're wrong. Like you might need to stretch the defense a little bit. So I would like to see a little more just variety in terms of the plays.
Yeah, and a big reason they're getting these explosive plays on first down isn't because they just run the routes better. They're just not being more clinical. They're not just, dicing them up. It's because JMU's running it at a 65% clip on first down. So the smart thing to do as a defense, as a defensive coordinator, is on those early downs to bring a safety into the box, or honestly bring both the safeties down into the box like Troy did at times and like UVA did at times. So within about a 5-yard radius of the line of scrimmage, you draw a little box tackle to tackle and back, and you normally have 8 to 9 guys in that box on the early downs, and JMU is repeatedly just running into a wall. They're essentially taking their head, there's a brick wall in front of them, and they're just hitting their head against the brick wall as hard as they can over and over and over again. And then on the few occasions that they decide to throw it, they're wide open because they either have single coverage with no over-the-top safety help, or they kind of have a busted zone, or something isn't relayed right, or there's an extra man on the blitz, so there's a guy running wide open. There's just so many different ways around it. So this isn't as easy as saying run the ball less, pass the ball more on first down, because the reason they're getting these great explosive plays on first down and they're averaging 10 yards per play on first down is because they're running it at a 65% clip on first.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe we can bring that down to 60, 55%. Like, I'm okay with running it a little bit more. The other issue, though, is the fact that you said it on early downs against Troy, they had such a bad success rate with rushes. And that's the scary part. Like, if you are not successful over and over and over again, that's why you have 5 drives that ended a punt when you need a touchdown.
Yeah, I think as well, the other thing that I kind of like to see a little bit of, and maybe I hope I explained this correctly, but it's when you have that variety, I think throwing it more on first down would lead like later in the game to better running plays, where like the defense maybe backs the safeties up a little bit.
Yes.
And on the flip side, like I think the running game, like I think that benefits, and the passing game actually struggled maybe a little bit surprisingly here, or maybe not, right? Because it's third and long when they're doing it, or second and long when they're doing it. But when teams are expecting pass, so on a passing down, which I think is considered from the website we're using, 2nd and 8 or more, 3rd and 5 or more, or 4th and 5 and more. JMU had a 27% success rate on those plays, which is just, I think that like you've got the defense, if you're in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, pretty easy to kind of know what you're doing. I think JMU was 3 of 16 on 3rd downs, and the average length was like 8 yards or something. That's such a tough spot to put McLeod in, to put the offense in, when it's like they know you're going to pass, so the pass rush doesn't have to like expect a run. And like it's just really hard to convert first downs when you're going in 3rd and long all day. So I think if they had a little more variety, they would be able to sort of stay ahead of the chains.
Yes.
And I think that's a doable mix.
Yeah.
We're not asking for like 70% pass on first down, but maybe a little closer to 50-50 in the right spot.
We were texting about this. It's just like we want Cignetti to call the game like he does when they were down against UVA all the time. Like you get up against Troy and you have a quote unquote 2 possession advantage, which is really only 9 points, which to me is kind of a fraudulent 2 possession advantage. But like you get up and then you just want to run the ball out and you want to start just grinding clock, and you're not putting your offense in opportunities to just kind of step on their throat. You're not putting them in opportunities to pull away and start really winning these games. Granted, you're taking the ball out of McLeod's hands, so you're less likely to turn the ball over and then give Troy an ability to recapture momentum and flip the field. But at the end of the day, Troy was 1 missed field goal away from winning that game when you deployed your conservative tactics. I think there's a happy medium. When you're between the opponent's 35 and 50, this is how I approach football as a coach, as I'm behind a mic on a podcast. Clearly I'm a coach. But on the opponent's 35 to 50, if it's 4th and less than 5, I'm all for going for it. I think the analytics say you should go for that because you're kind of in no man's land. And essentially, if you give it over to them, that's just a good punt return. Seems like Cignetti's okay with just punting it, pooch punting it, and pinning the other team deep. Granted, Ryan Hansen is an absolute weapon, but then it just makes you scratch your head. Why did he go for it on his own 25 against UVA?
Just
like it doesn't add up.
mental lapse there, I guess. I think they'll still be somewhat conservative, but to give them a little credit, the UVA game where they're better offensively did have a little bit of a better mixture in terms of early downs, so not just first downs. So on early downs against UVA, 54% of those plays were runs, right? So a little closer to 50-50. And
They're
both
also
of
down for a good part of that game. So they had to.
Right, that's fair. But both of the successful rates, 48% pass, 48% run. So it was like a little more balanced. They had more combined success on early downs, I think, because they had a little more play calling variety. And at the same time, like those last two drives when the running game started to work, part of that is I think UVA probably expected them to pass more.
Yes, exactly. And they're not stacking the box. I think what it gets back to is I think Cignetti needs to give McLeod the ability to make checks at the line, because up to this point, it doesn't seem like McLeod has full reign of this offense. He's not allowed to do this. Is from us. We're watching this game on TV. We're not seeing everything. We're, of course, not in the huddles. We don't know exactly what's happening. But from our viewpoint, it looks like McLeod does not have full reign. He's not been given the keys to this offense. When there's a stacked box, he needs to be able to identify that, walk up to the line of scrimmage, make a check for a quick pass or something that puts them in a more advantageous situation. Instead, it seems like he hasn't been given the keys, so all he can do is just hand it off to Tyson Lawton or Kalon Black and just watch them get absolutely obliterated at the line of scrimmage.
And my other kind of final play calling point, I would love to see McLeod keep it on his own read. I think that has a chance to work, especially in like third and short. The other thing, I would love to see either a run or like a pop pass, a jet sweep kind of thing that sort of starts toward the middle of the offensive line and then stretches a team horizontally. I feel like they do a lot of like running it into the middle of the offensive line or bubble screens. But I feel like there's a way to get to the outside that's not a bubble screen that I think could be really successful, or at the very least, like make a defense think about something else.
Yeah. Do you want to hear something crazy? And this is more nitpicking into some advanced stats that was very interesting to me.
Yes.
On a points per drive basis, if you take what the defense has allowed on a points per drive basis and what the offense has allowed on a points per drive basis, JMU's actually in the negative. Offensively, they've only scored 2.42 offensive points per game, which is around like the 70s. They're about in the 70s in the nation in that statistical category. The defense has allowed 2.5 points per drive. For comparison's sake, last year, JMU's defense allowed just 1.46 points per drive. And offensively, they were about at the same. They scored 2.4 points per drive, but they had a 0.94 net. So essentially, they were scoring one more point every drive than the opponent. And I think that shows, and we were just talking about the offense for a good amount of time. This brings it back to the defense. The offense may not be all that much of an issue because on a per drive basis, they're actually outscoring what 2022 did up into this point. Very small sample, only 8 quarters because it's against FBS teams. But I think it shows that the defense in the secondary has got a little bit more, and it's kind of eye-opening.
I'm interested to see how the rest of the year goes for sure. They also definitely had some, like they lucked out with the Sunbelt West schedule last year. Yes. They had some favorable games. Even Middle Tennessee wasn't that daunting
at the time. And then they beat Miami.
That's true. But they weren't great. But they were okay. They were a solid team. So I don't know. I think there's room to improve, which is exciting. They could easily be 1-2. Could easily be 1-2, but they're 3.
Sure, they could be 0-3.
Okay.
I told you I might get a little pessimistic on this spot.
But overall, 3-0. I'm pleased with that. I just think they could open up the offense a little bit. I think the secondary could get a little bit better. And if they do that, I think the reason we're saying it is like they could be nuts. Like they could get to a point where they're 8-0 or something late in the season.
If the safeties and the secondary can kind of just give us 25% more, and the offense can kind of find a rhythm, I think this team can compete for the Sun Belt East. I think right here, right now, I don't think they're a Sun Belt East competitor. Like, I don't think they'll be in the mix for it at the end of the year.
Really?
Daniel also said Jordan Swan is very much being missed. Yes. That safety group is lacking something. Maybe it's Jordan Swan. I don't know. I think Q Reed needs to play more.
I like you reading the passing game. Meehan's made some plays. I don't know. We'll see. Want to give D'Angelo Pons a chance to sort of get in.
Well, he's a corner. He's a corner.
Swan was a corner, wasn't he?
I thought Swan was a safety.
I thought he was a corner, but I don't know if they moved him, but they would list him at corner.
Okay, so my fault. So you're right.
Well, that's where Pons comes in.
Yeah, okay.
Ben comes in. He's the replacement. Boom.
Okay, perfect. I do want to shout out this quote from Anonymous over the Overreaction Corner.
Sure.
Did make the final cut for the Overreaction segment, but we were talking about aggressiveness and decision making, so I wanted to say what he said. Signetti may be getting a talking to. I would love to do that talking to from Jeff Bourne brings him into the office. You've underperformed, Mr. Signetti. If sloppy games like this continue to happen, even though we're winning these games, there's absolutely no reason they need to be this close. It feels that Curt Signetti doesn't make enough adjustments to the opponent early in the season, but if this continues to happen and we end up starting to lose these sloppy games, there has to be a conversation about Signetti's job security. So, folks, we are week 4. JMU is 3-0, and in the Overreaction Corner, we've gotten some people calling for Signetti's job already. So keep doing you, JMU Nation.
I also don't totally agree. Well, obviously with all of it, but like the part where it's like he hasn't adjusted to the opponent when they won a game that was like way higher scoring against Virginia, and like that game was literally defined by how they adjusted during a rain delay compared to Virginia. And then you also look at like they were willing to play the ugly Troy game, muck it up, and found a way to win. Like I think they've done a pretty good job of being like, hey, field goals maybe don't make sense against Georgia Southern. They kind of definitely make sense against Troy.
I will say too, I'm very interested to see how they like play against South Alabama. Like if it's 4th and 4 from the opponent's 37 and they don't go for it, I'm going to be very upset. But if they start going for it there, it's like, okay, they understand the situation. So I'll reserve full judgment until then. Going from there, we're going to head to the Overreaction Corner.
Yes.
This one, Bennett's very excited.
I'm so excited for these.
Okay. I'm going to go through them and read them out loud, and I want to just feel your reaction through the screen. We're going undefeated and getting a waiver to play in the Sun Belt title game in the college football playoff. It's written, baby. Anonymous said that. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the group of 5, like the top of the group of 5 right now, is not great. There's not like a clear cut, this team is going to get the New Year's 6 spot. So the JMU online chatter and honestly, probably even some media coverage, if they're like 7 or 8-0, there will absolutely be articles, tweets, petitions for like waivers for the Sun Belt to change their mind. So if they can keep winning, it's going to get silly with this kind of take.
JMU will win out and make a New Year's 6 bowl. Matt B.
Honestly, don't they have like the pinstripe bowl? Probably a better chance of making the New York 6 pinstripe bowl.
Play calling is atrocious, Daniel. I don't know if this is our Daniel or another Daniel, but I love it.
Yes and no, right? They got some room to improve, but I don't know.
First down play calling is atrocious. 65%.
That's fair.
Throw it a little more. When will the rest of the Sun Belt believe? Particularly the other fan bases, not necessarily the opposing players and coaches. I love the little amendment to it. When will they believe? Well, actually, not the other teams, just the fans. I don't think they'll ever believe until JMU wins a championship.
It is funny though, right? We had the Troy boys on and they were talking and they're like, look, like you guys have a good team, but you haven't quite arrived. Like you got to beat us in our hostile environment that I guess gets scared off by rain. I don't know. It's like, I do think there's a little bit of doubt still where it's like, oh, they're solid. It's like, no, JMU's really good.
If they beat South Alabama, like I'll go over the top with it all.
Also, the West, any fan base from the West should just
they can't talk.
Be very quiet.
Shut up.
What kind of division is that? ULM, really cool.
You're the CAA. Get over it. I don't know when this person put in their answer, but it's I miss Everett Withers.
I like to think this is like a uniform combination fan, and they just want to see a little more creativity on like jerseys and helmets.
I was like, what do you miss about him? Bold predictions. JMU chokes a 21-plus point lead at some point this season, and Barnett wins the quarterback job back by the end of the season. Anonymous.
I kind of like get the idea, but McLeod hasn't done anything wrong yet. They just
McLeod's been fine.
He's been very good. They just don't throw it very often, and when they do, it's like 3rd and 8. So
yes,
regardless of which quarterback you're putting into that situation, it's not going to go well.
McLeod's yet to throw a pick, right?
Correct.
That's very good. And our last overreaction, swimming in the deep end, ponds on fire, regardless of how sloppy that game was. Wow. Keep ponds on the 2 deep. Patrick McGrath. This one I put in specifically for you, Bennett, just so we can hype up your boy.
Keep him on the 2 deep. Put him at starter. Also, it sounded like, so he had that big hit right where he busts up a screen. And it sounds like the announcer said that he could also reach 22 miles an hour in practice. I don't know if Dollison can do it too, if they got signals crossed. I'd love to see those 2 race. We've only seen Dollison get 1 touch for 3 yards. Pons has barely played now, but maybe they could do like a hype video where it's just the 2 of them like slow motion running the 40-yard dash.
That'd be a pretty good hype video.
Or fast motion might make more sense for talking about their speed. Slow mo is probably a bad idea.
All right, going from there, we got some news or snooze. You ready?
Yes.
All right,
News
Bennett's going to hit me with 3 quotes. I'm going to decide if they're newsworthy or snoozeworthy. Hit me.
We moved it from Wednesday to Monday, so it'll be 1 quote and 2 factoids. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because we do not have near as much quote material as normal.
But we'll start with a Signetti quote. He's being asked about last week when he was pissed about practice. Maybe the practice wasn't quite as bad as maybe I communicated, but the subsequent practices were much sharper and we are ready to play.
Newsworthy because it's hilarious, but in reality, it's snoozeworthy. The fact that you mentioned this, he used a double maybe. Maybe the practice wasn't quite as bad as maybe I communicated. Maybe I blew it out of proportion, and I don't know. It's absolutely hilarious that he's just like, did I say that? I said that. Because it was a David Teal question. He was like, the question was something along the lines of like, last week you said you didn't have the guy's attention and you needed to get the attention. What did you do that week in practice after that really bad practice you talked to us about to get their attention? And Signetti was kind of like, we're all trying to figure out who said it was a bad practice here, folks.
Yeah, it's like, how'd you get their attention? I always had their attention. It's
I never lost it. But you said, maybe.
Pretty funny coaching tactic there to get the guys extra fired up by just being like, you were bad. And they're like, we were actually fine.
All right, hit me with the next one.
Number 2, ESPN's Football Power Index has JMU ranked 84th. I think it's a predictive metric, but it has them 84th nationally, and it has them, I believe, in the bottom half. I think they're 8th in the Sun Belt in FPI. What are your thoughts?
Snoozeworthy. Predictive measures haven't really figured out reclassifying schools yet, so take all of that with a grain of salt. The most important thing is, I believe, according to like the USA Today ranking 133 teams, JMU's like 26th out of them all, and Alabama's like 25th. So JMU could beat Bama. This is the year we want Bama.
That's true. I still don't want Bama, but the other
quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. My final factoid. Both starting linebackers are hurt.
Okay, we need newsworthy, but we need better injury reporting in college football. Look, I don't want to be that guy and be like, if there's a multi-billion-dollar industry in sports betting on college football. If we're going to be allowed to bet on college football, I think there needs to be some sort of injury transparency in the entire process, because not only were they both listed as starters on the 2 deep, neither one dressed, and there was no, and Signetti would not report on either one's status pre-game or post-game. This isn't honestly, this actually might be a competitive advantage, like at this point in the season, more than a quarterback. But like, we need to know these things. And I'm not trying to be like that type of like sports bettor who's just like, we need to know so we can adjust the lines and I can make a valid bet. But at the same time, like, there needs to be some sort of injury transparency in college football, because the fact that Kurt Signetti can just not answer injury questions and then list Walker and Jones as starters, not even have like an injury debt, like nothing, and then they don't even dress, is just wild to me.
It's also one where like students are connected enough, and even like us at times, where you might be able to get the inside information before it's out and like pass it along, which people very much don't want, right? With sports betting,
Yeah.
that's a concern with like coaches and other things. So that's a need for transparency, is so you don't have that, illegal passing of inside information. But until you are forced to do that by the NCAA or your conference, you're not going to do it. But yeah, I was surprised that I didn't think Walker was going to go, but I was surprised that Taurus Jones couldn't go. Also, Kurt Cignetti's injury update today was no, he does not have one. So we have no idea what their status is. Shout out to Aiden Fisher and Trent Hendrick for playing pretty darn well in their place.
Pretty damn well. Also, maybe it makes sense why Taurus Jones had kind of a lackluster day at UVA. Maybe he was nursing an injury.
Yeah, that's true. It did kind of seem like that on a couple tackles.
Yeah, thank you. I was waiting for you to
Sorry,
respond.
I was reading some listener questions.
All right, hit me with another one.
Some of these we've gotten to a little bit. One will be a Utah State. Here's a good one from Drizzy Dalton 87. What was the biggest surprise from last week's game, and why are opposing fans afraid of our coaches?
What was the biggest surprise from last week? Was that the question?
Yes.
That they won a 16-14 slugfest. Like, I just thought for sure that Troy's offense was going to go off. I think I predicted a 35-30 or something like that win. I didn't think the secondary would be able to play that well. I thought the rushing offense of Troy would at least get a little bit of something going, not necessarily saying they were going to average like 5-6 yards a carry, but I thought maybe they'd average 2 or 3, and instead they averaged negative yards. So I was just shocked by the way the defense played, in all honesty.
My biggest surprise is that Gunnar Watson completed a 4th down conversion. I forget the exact time of the game. It was on JMU side of the field, the floater. He threw the thing on the TV screen, and I thought it was 30 yards over his receiver's head. It's only like a 20-yard pass. The thing like apex 10 yards away from Watson probably, and then floated down to the receiver and was caught. To me, that was the biggest surprise.
What a surprise. All right.
What a surprise that was.
Yeah, that'll take us to this week's Three Notched Weekly preview. We're previewing the Utah State Aggies. They come into this one 1-2 overall, 0-1 in Mountain West play. They were picked to finish near the back of Mountain West. And last week, they got blown out by Air Force. They ended up putting their backup quarterback in. And once their backup quarterback came in, they actually looked pretty respectable. They have actually a very good rushing attack. They rank 18th in the nation in EPA per game. And offensively, they're not terrible. In total EPA this season, they're 45th in the nation. But defensively, Utah State is not good. They can't really defend against the pass. They're worse against the pass than JMU. And they definitely can't defend against the run. They've allowed 1.04 EPA per game this season against the run. So if you put up together all of the rushes in a game against Utah State, you could expect it to be added at 1 point to the scoreboard. What does JMU need to do to win?
Yeah, I think you've got to continue to play good defense, right? If you can be strong in the secondary, that's a big deal. Utah State, a true freshman quarterback, a little scary, maybe a little PTSD from the UVA game with a true freshman quarterback, but I think JMU can get after the passer and have a lot of success. Air Force seemed to really bully Utah State in the trenches, so that gives me a lot of hope for JMU's performance in this one. I think that'll be the focus, win the line of scrimmage, and then just any ounce of like first down passing, a little creativity on offensive play calling. And I think JMU has a chance to really dominate Utah State's defense. Super winnable game. Maybe the hardest part of this is that it's the 3rd road game in 3 weeks.
And it's in Utah.
Yeah.
A couple more kind of advanced stats I want to dive into around this game that I find very interesting and I want to get your take on. So the Dukes have the 5th best starting field position in the entire nation. Their average start is on the opponent's 41. And defensively, they have one of the best opponent starting field positions. On average, opponents are starting on their own 16, which is absolutely a bit like wild. This special teams unit is a complete weapon. But despite having the 5th best starting field position, if they were not reclassifying, because they technically aren't in the statistics because they're reclassifying, they'd be the 66th highest scoring offense with 30 points per game. If you only count FBS games, they've scored 26 points per game on average, and that is 81st in the country. Is that something to be worried about?
I'm not concerned because I still think Troy is like a good team. They might only go like 7-5 or something, or maybe they struggle a little bit. I just feel like they're good defensively. I feel like nobody on their schedule is going to do what JMU did in terms of rushing yards, whatever it was, -12. So I don't know. I still think JMU's got a lot more in them, but this is a kind of game here where if they don't show that, I think I'll become like immediately concerned. I just feel like this is a great matchup for JMU on both sides.
It's a great matchup that I'm kind of worried about, though, because this is a Utah State team that has allowed a lot of rushing yards this season. They have been, like you said, bullied in the trenches, but JMU only has a 36.8% success rate on the entire season when they run the football, which is 103rd in the nation. That's not great. And on a per game basis, a negative 1.59 EPA per game. So, like, this rushing attack has not performed well this entire season. Utah State, with their run game, has a 51.2% success rate.
Is this all games?
Yes. This is FBS versus FBS. Sorry.
So it doesn't include the Idaho State shellacking for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Then I'd be a little surprised by that based on their that can't be right. That's got to include the FCS, doesn't it?
Maybe?
Their rushing attack.
Data from ESPN. Oh, it's on it. This is all.
Is
sorry,
it all
this is it's all of them because
okay.
They're net. I'll break down net yards in a little bit, like average yards. That's only FBS versus FBS.
Okay.
But all the data everywhere else is from ESPN.com. So it's all games.
Okay. So I've got their like team page up. They average 4.8 yards per rush against Iowa, which is actually pretty good. 9.27 against Idaho State, and then 2 against Air Force, which Air Force has like a really big time. Run defense, if you look at yards per play, 4.6 against Iowa, 8.4 against Idaho State, and 4.5 against Air Force. I feel like their stats are like they can score because they dropped 78 on Idaho State. I will say, though, the backup, Hillstead, I believe it is, was pretty good against Air Force, even though it was in garbage time. He played well. He was 18 of 27 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns with no picks.
That's fair. And I want to break down available yards with you real quick.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong in my explanation. I had to read the explanation of available yards a few times, but essentially what it is it takes the available yards to you. So say you start on the 50-yard line. You can only get 50 yards because that's all that's available to you, because then that's a touchdown. And so then the percentage, the available yards percentage, which is what we're going to talk about, takes the amount of yards you got in that drive. So say you got to the 25, you gained 25 yards, but that's only 50% of what you could have gained. So for that drive, you have a 50% available yard share. So far this season, JMU has gotten a 45.2% of all of their available yards, which is 71st in the nation. That worries me. That isn't great. In 2022, they had a 48.9% they got 48.9% of all of their available yards. This offense, I know we've gone back and forth on ragging on the defense a little bit, ragging on the offense a little bit. Offense has some room to grow.
I would agree. I think the part that maybe gives me like a blind optimism is I think Troy can play good defense. I think they were ultra conservative because they don't think Troy's offense was good. And I wonder how different some of their metrics would be if they started McLeod against Bucknell. They wasted a half where they should have scored.
They wasted 3 quarters,
45 points during that time when they like barely scored,
Today I was just like looking up all these advanced stats and essentially arguing with myself because I was being a pessimist, and then I would have my optimist point of view. The optimist take on it, though, is that this season, when you, instead of seeing available yards to the end zone and you move it back 20 yards and you see how often they get to the red zone. So instead of 100 available yards, it's 80 available yards. They've gotten 49.7% of available yards when you're measuring it to the red zone, which is a little bit more kind of exciting.
Yeah, just got to cash in some drives a little more. Well, and some of that too, right, is they decided not to kick field goals against Bucknell. They had those like fourth downs from like the Bucknell 5 where they didn't.
And it also shows like they didn't go for it as often, but they're like getting into opponent's side of the field. So maybe if they do have to be aggressive, they could potentially kind of go for it more. But those are my advanced stats for today that I dug up and spent the time arguing with myself today on.
I like that. Let me hit you with some listener questions. We got some fun ones here. Shane Molderig. Are you concerned about JMU's offensive passing based on the past 2 games, despite both opponents having really good defenses?
I think you just touched on, I think we're in kind of 2 different camps on it. You're not really, because Troy was good. I'm more worried about the fact of play calling.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about success rate, and I'm worried about like the times to be aggressive or not to be aggressive. I'm not necessarily worried about like the passing game straight up, but I'm worried about if we continue to run at a 65% clip on first down, how will that impact the offense moving forward?
I just think it'd be fascinating if they started a game with like 7 play action passes. Like just we're going to throw it or we're going to run McLeod on the outside. Like a little something where a defense is like, oh, great. They're not going to just run it up the middle on first down. Like that makes it hard for us.
Also, not to get like full nerd, because I try and not get too nerdy on this podcast, but I love like going into the minutia of it all. Play action, you don't need a good run game to run play action. Like this is a fake thing. Like coaches always talk about, you need to be able to run the ball to set up play action. You need to be able to run the ball to set up the pass. No, you don't. That's all fake. Whatever the first coach to start that rumor was should be given an Emmy for acting, because that is just all a lie. You do not need a good rushing attack to set up play action. Just run play action. I don't care if you're averaging 1 yard per carry. I don't care if you have not run it all game. Run play action. That's all.
I'm with you. All right, a couple other good ones. One from Kyle English at Kyle_English5. Thoughts on this Utah State freshman quarterback? Could he pose an Anthony Calandria style threat to our defense?
I'm going to be honest. Can I make a hot take about Anthony Calandria?
You can.
I think he's going to be like a really good starter for UVA.
He showed some really nice stuff against Maryland until the fourth quarter, but showed some good stuff. I think the Utah State guy, they seem to like him based on what I was reading online. I also saw one of their fans had posted, he's like 5'10", 185 pounds. He basically like looks like Calandria. But they were like, if he was 6'3", somebody posted this, he would be the #1 quarterback recruit in the country. That's maybe the dumbest tweet I've read in a really long time. Like, respect to whoever tweeted that. I forget who it was. So stupid. I don't think he's nearly as good as Calandria. He might be okay. They do have some good receivers, but I'm not panicked about it at all. I think their offensive line is a concern. I know kind of maybe similar to UVA's, but UVA's was like more concerning because they're in the ACC maybe than like the actual offensive line. I just think they're going to get a lot of pressure, and UVA's defense I think is better than Utah State. So I'm not that worried, especially a true freshman making his first start without like an emotional charge based on the situation around him.
Yeah, and Utah State was picked to finish near the back of the Mountain West for a reason. They haven't been good for a while. They're not great this year. They're 1-2 losses to Iowa and Air Force, not world beaters. I think JMU.
Yeah, I was just going to say he can make some throws, but he also didn't look nearly like I think one of Calandria's things was that he moved well.
Yes.
This guy did not appear to have that same level of like shake a defender and then hit someone. So I think that helps.
And as we all know, Utah State a QB factory. So it makes sense that they have this 5'10" quarterback freshman that is just poised to go.
Yeah, gosh. Okay, another one from Chris in Hberg. Chris, do you think we have to worry about losing a player like Kamara to the transfer portal like Antoine Wells?
Yes.
The dude dominated.
Yes.
Enjoy him while we got him. Yeah, definitely. He's a freak. And he's got multiple years of eligibility. He's absolutely
Also worry that
gonna be-
Jalen Walker's going. Also worry that Torres Jones is going. Also worry that Chroma will go back to Rutgers. Also worry that like Chauncey Logan may go. Also worry that D'Angelo Pons may go. Like,
don't say that. Do not say that.
any good player, you have to worry about being poached.
Yes. And it helps
Especially
you.
with the way JMU, not to like throw shots at JMU right now, but especially the way JMU has like not really been at the forefront of NIL. Another G5 school can poach him if they have a nice check waiting for him on the other side. And I'm all for it. Go get your money, kids. Like, go do it. If Tulane is offering you $100,000 to go and be the spokesman for the local car dealership, go transfer to Tulane. JMU needs to get Charlie Obaugh on the phone and get them to sponsor some kids.
There you go. You heard it here first. Last listener question from Steak Sauce. It's is steak sauce, but the E is a 3.
I'm 99% sure this guy left a left a overreaction corner, and his overreaction was REEEEEEEEEE.
All right then. Well, Steak Sauce, you feel better or worse about the team? So I guess comparing how you felt last
Better.
year, I feel better this year.
What?
I know.
No, wait. What? I'm sorry. What?
So last year was 3-0 with the App State win, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I feel better this year. And I know that's like
huh? Wait, I'm shocked by this answer.
well, it's part of it because they had last year already. So like I kind of like coming into the year.
No,
Yeah, they coming into the year, I'm like, oh, like they
that
can
makes
be one
no
of the best.
sense.
Last year I thought they were gonna go like 5-7. So
Why
after
is this
3
our
weeks,
biggest argument on the podcast? I'm
after
like,
3
let's
weeks,
see.
I was cautiously optimistic. But this year, they're 3-0 with 2 huge wins without even playing well. They also went 3-2 on the road last year. They're already 2-0 on the road with 2 huge ones out of the way. They've only played one game in Bridgeforth. It was against Bucknell. Like if they can hold serve at home for the most part, it's going to be they're going to match last season. They could lose every road game the rest of the way, and they would match last season or get
If
close.
they win every home game,
Yeah,
which is South
that's doable.
Alabama and App State.
That's doable. I'm not scared of App. Didn't ECU score 28 against them or something? That's the same ECU team with Mike Houston that was kicking like a sadness field goal against Michigan at the end of the game.
You
Not
are
worried about
you're
them at
insane.
all.
What about South Alabama, the team that just blew out a Big 12 team?
Yeah, JMU lost one home game last year. That could be your one. They don't have to do much else on the road, and they've got some winnable road games. Marshall's a crap team. You just kidding. Marshall's really good.
Marshall's
But
very
I don't know.
good.
I think they can match last year from this point fairly. I don't want to say easily, but it seems like that's very much in the realm. Could you see them going worse than 7-5?
Yes.
Really?
I could see them losing at Utah State,
They're not
then at South Alabama. So what? That's
at South
0-2.
Alabama.
That'd be insane if they lost at South Alabama, because they would be in the wrong state for that game. That was a stupid thing for me to say. I don't want to get too pessimistic. I feel like I'm the more pessimistic one.
I'm pretty excited after the Troy win. I think they've got a bright season ahead.
If they beat Utah State in like a convincing fashion where we're not on the edge of our seat, every game this season has given me heartburn.
I think they're going to blow them out.
If they go on the road and blow out Utah State for the third consecutive road game where they travel to Logan, Utah, I will be all in on this team. If McLeod throws for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards and Kaylon Black rushes for over 100, and then they win by 3-4 touchdowns, I'm all in. But until they do that, I'm not sold on this. Mainly because the offense, last year I had complete faith in Todd Centeio and that offense. This year I just do not have the same faith in the offense up to this point. I know they put up 36 against an ACC school, but
I think they just got to sling it a little more and they'll be fine.
All right. I just don't think Signetti will sling it more.
I feel like he's done it before where he comes in, he lulls you to sleep. Like the Cole Johnson team that couldn't score in 2021.
In the red zone?
Yeah. For like that 3-week stretch, got pretty darn elite offensively at the end of that year. Like something just clicked and they were scoring a ton of points. And I think they've got some defenses coming up that kind of suck. I don't think Utah State can play defense. I
I
don't think
mean,
Georgia Southern can play defense.
at the end of the
I don't
day,
think
they're
ODU can play
3-0
defense.
right now. They're 3-0 right now. And like I said a few times already, they did it one way against UVA. They did it a completely different way against Troy. It was awesome. They're 3-0. That's all that matters. Yes, I'm very excited about this team, but look, the Seahawks already crushed my dreams once this season. I can't let myself get too high for JMU for them to be crushed. I thought Seattle was a Super Bowl contender, and then they went out and did that against the Rams, and then they destroyed your Lions, but that's neither here nor there. But we have a UConn fan tuning in. Love that. We're crap. We know we're crap. But once we start thinking we're the crappiest team in the world, we get good. And then we think we're going to get crappy. And so he said, this is why I have to root for JMU too. Well, you're going to be in a predicament later in the season, sir.
I would be fun if UConn 0-3 UConn beat Duke. I think that would be phenomenal this weekend. But I'm not very concerned about that home game for the Dukes at this point.
Neither am I. Anything else you want to add from listener questions or about Utah State?
I think that covers a lot of it.
Perfect. So that brings us to everyone's favorite podcast segment. We've been nominated for like 15 Webbies for this segment. It's the Sun Belt Weekly Pick'em. Starting things off, Virginia Tech, Marshall. Marshall was a touchdown favorite at one point. Does Marshall win? Does Marshall cover?
I think Marshall wins a close one over Virginia Tech.
It's at Marshall. I'm also going to go with Marshall. Oh, also worth noting that the current weekly pick'em record, Bennett has a 2-game lead. Back-to-back weeks, he beat me by 1 game. Last week, you went 11-1. I went 10-2.
What did I get wrong?
Do you want to know?
Yeah.
Wake.
Oh, you don't have it up. Sorry.
No, I do. No.
If you have it up, yeah.
Wake Forest.
That's crap, man. Oh my god.
You were one held lead away from a perfect 12. We've never had a perfect week, I think.
That's tough.
All right, so I'm also on Marshall. Western Kentucky at Troy. I think Troy bounces back and
Troy
gets a massive win.
Be a little alarmed if they don't, to be honest. It would be nice to see them bounce back.
Georgia Southern at Ball State. Can Georgia Southern go into Muncie, Indiana, and take down the Cardinals?
I think so. One of those interesting cross-division games this week. Got a bunch of the cross G5 games. I like Georgia Southern.
I love Georgia. I thought they were going to take it to Wisconsin, and then their quarterback threw 15 interceptions. Yeah. Oh, this one's going to be a tough one. I don't know if ODU has it in them. Texas A&M Commerce at ODU.
Yeah, I mean ODU at this point, they've already lost to a couple P5s, but now they get Texas A&M coming into town. Commerce, and I think they're going to get it done.
I think so too. I think they're going to make it close and almost blow a lead like they did last week, but who knows?
Unbelievable, man.
Central Michigan at South Alabama. Can I say a take?
Yeah.
I'm back on the South Alabama train. I think they're the best team in the Sun Belt. The West is trash, and they're going to just sleepwalk their way through the West this season. But like, whoever comes out of the East is going to get royally smacked down by the Jaguars.
They're really good.
Unless it's JMU. JMU will royally smack them down, but we're not eligible to play, so.
We do play them at home, so I guess we'll see. I'll take South Alabama in this one.
I will as well. I'm all in on the Jaguars. Nevada at Texas State. Did you see what Texas State did to Jackson State?
Yeah, pretty good.
77-34 or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Texas State.
Replicate that, but yeah, I like Texas State. 17-point favorite.
I love what GJ get. Like, he did what Everett Withers thought he could do, which was win at Texas State. Everett Withers never won anywhere except for JMU. Barely.
It's a real party in the end zone now.
It's a party in the end zone, baby. Southern Miss at Arkansas State. I don't think Arkansas State will score more than 10 points in this game. Give me Southern Miss.
I think the funniest possible Sunbelt West outcome would be Arkansas State like figuring it out and getting to the Sunbelt title game. But I don't see that happening, so I'll take Southern Miss.
App State, Wyoming. This one's in Laramie. Also worth mentioning that, like, I did it earlier this season, that the Sunbelt East has a bunch of people that just travel a ton. One of them being App State to Laramie, Wyoming. And then there's like Georgia State, who barely travels, and it's kind of hilarious. I think Georgia State for the entire season travels about 2,600 miles. The earlier in the season when Coastal went to UCLA, that was like a 2,500 mile trip.
That's incredible. But I'll take
Did you
Wyoming.
pick this? Oh, what?
I'll take Wyoming. Wyoming, short favorite. They're really good. They already beat Texas Tech. They hung in there with Texas for 4 quarters on the road. That's a long trip for App State.
Wow. This was a tough one. I'm going to be honest with you. This is tough. You know why? I'm down 2 games.
You're already
So
chasing.
Do I play contrarian here? Or I go Wyoming too? They nearly made Texas not back. Buffalo, Louisiana is the final game before we get to JMU, Utah State.
Buffalo's pretty bad, and you know what that means. It means they did already appear on Liberty's schedule. I like Louisiana to win this game.
I'm clipping that and putting that onto all of Twitter. So all of Twitter hears that. Give me the Raging Cajuns. What happened to Buffalo? They used to be good.
I don't
Did they
know.
lose their coach?
Yeah, well, they had Leopold, right? And then he went to Kansas.
Yeah, and then he started winning their crazy concept.
Yeah.
So that's it. Oh, wait. JMU, Utah State. Give me your winner. Give me your score prediction. You said you think JMU blows them out.
Yeah, JMU 38-10.
What?
I will be floored if this game is close. And if it's close, it's because they're going to lose the turnover battle like 4-0. I think Utah State is bad. I think JMU is good.
I think JMU wins 24-17.
That will cause me to panic.
I don't think I'm not sold. I think they're winning this game, but this is so
Wait,
tough.
we missed it. We missed a biggie.
Which one?
Thursday game.
Oh, Georgia State Coastal. So sorry about that, guys. Georgia State went into Charlotte and they took down Biff Poggi's squad. Did you see Biff Poggi's comments after the game?
Biff Poggi's willing to fire everybody now.
That's what Georgia State can do to a program, all right? So JMU better be careful when they go down to Atlanta later this season, because Georgia State has a tendency to make you just question everything and want to fire everyone and just simplify all your schemes.
That's true. This one's a scary one. I kind of think Coastal has a chance to be really, really good. Was impressed with them against UCLA in the loss. Feel like they're close. Georgia State maybe sort of skirting by. So I'll say Coastal wins this one.
I'm going to go Georgia State. This
I like
is
that.
Georgia State's stamp. This is their way to just arrive on the Sun Belt East scene. Also, how scary would it be if Georgia State wins this game? Like, that is a lot of very good teams in the East.
Yeah, there's nobody really truly awful. Like Old Dominion is probably the worst, right? But they're not awful.
And they look kind of good. But
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add before we get up on out of here?
Just a quick shout out to Jeff Bourne's retirement. Shout out to Jeff Bourne. I'm sure we'll get into that later on. Some basketball time, some off-season pods when they're looking for a replacement. But that's going to be a massive replacement.
That may be. I saw a few people say this on Twitter, and I don't disagree. That might be the biggest hire in JMU athletics history.
Yeah, I saw the sports blog guys were on that stand. Probably true, right?
I think so. I mean, if you hire wrong, an athletic director can like single-handedly torpedo an entire department, more so than what Rowe did to the men's basketball program. All right, for Bennett Conlon, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.